So greetings and welcome to another segment of Wild Treasures of an Outdoorsman. My name is Peter Updike, and we're in the studio tonight, and wanted to profile my best buck to date. This is a Georgia deer I killed in Macon County, Georgia. As I said in the other video, that my good friend Kelly Wallace, who passed away about a year ago, I owe him a huge debt of gratitude for a lifetime of enjoying the wilderness together, enjoying the outdoors, enjoying the outdoor lifestyle. He taught me more than I would ever have learned on my own in such a short time. Of course, there were a lot of things we learned together. And when he moved from Florida up to Georgia, he was gracious enough to continue our sharing of the outdoors and said, "Peter, you need to come up here and go deer hunting." And for about 20 years, I went up there almost every year. There's a few years here and there that I missed, but I joined a hunt club near there and always went and stayed at Kelly's and always hunted on his property as well as at the hunt club. And I killed a deer or two there at the hunt club, and I killed this one on his property. And yeah, you know, as hunters and outdoorsmen, you know, we like to think of ourselves as being lone hunters. I know that I do. I like to hunt by myself. But when you have someone who's going to lead you along and share ideas and share information and share their tree stands and their property and their deer with you. And of course, I stayed in his barn every time I went, and he shared everything that he had with me, and I'm so grateful. And because of his willingness to share and our bond as brothers, well, I was able to kill this great buck. But it wasn't without Kelly. Kelly was a large part of this hunt. So let me tell you a little bit about this deer. I killed this deer in Macon County, Georgia. I killed him very close to the Flint River, and I killed him from a ladder stand. He's about 16 inches wide. He's not real wide, but he's 16 inches wide, and he's got nice heavy main beams. He's got big heavy points, and yeah, he's got stickers all throughout here and all kind of gnarly stuff going on there. So he's a great deer. He scores a little more than 140 inches, and I'm real proud of this deer, and the memory that it serves for me is something I'll cherish as well. So I was in Macon County hunting for, I don't know, I guess I'd been there 5 or 6 days without killing a deer. Don't let anyone tell you that hunting in Georgia is easy, because it's not, especially in quality deer management counties. In Macon County, a deer has to be 15 inches wide or greater, or have, I think it's a 20-inch main beam. They want you to kill mature deer, and Kelly made that very clear to me when I went up there and went hunting, that, you know, we want to kill good quality deer. We don't want to shoot deer that are too young, even if they meet the legal requirement. Now, he never scolded me for some of the smaller deer that I killed. In fact, he always told me, you know, whatever you feel like you want to do, you're more than welcome to do. And he never wanted me to shoot deer that were too small or not legal. But yeah, he gave me a lot of grace, but at the same time asked that I show a little restraint on some smaller deer, especially year after year after year. I always kept going up there, and sometimes I could go up there 2 or 3 times a year if I wanted to. I could go anytime I wanted. But I had been coming off of my very first deer hunting vacation. In other words, I joined together a couple of hunts. I had drawn a quota permit for the Half Moon Wildlife Management Area, and I killed a nice 10-point buck on Saturday morning. And I was planning to go up to Georgia on Monday. But if you're like me, when you kill a buck you want to put on the wall, well, you get him to the taxidermist as quickly as you can. So I had to go to the taxidermist on Monday, so I didn't get up to Georgia till a day late. But I got up to Georgia a day late, and I had my camper and all of my gear, and yeah, I was excited to be there. But after 5 days, I was ready to go home. I had hunted 5 days, every morning, every evening. Sometimes I hunt all day long, sitting in your stand. Saw a lot of deer, saw some bucks, saw some that maybe I could have shot, but didn't. And Yeah, sometimes it gets a little hard to decide whether or not they're good. You don't want to walk up on a deer and be sorry you shot it, especially when someone has you as a guest, right? So Sunday morning came and I was getting ready to load up my trailer and for the 5 hour drive back home when Kelly came and he said, "Look, man," I said, "I heard a lot of chasing, a lot of grunting, a lot of activity down by the creek stand. Why don't we go down to the creek stand?" I was almost burned out. Like I said, I was a vacation of deer hunting, and the only day that I took off from deer hunting was Sunday and Monday to go to the taxidermist. Stayed home to go to the taxidermist. And if I had not killed a deer on that Saturday, I was planning on hunting Sunday too. So yeah, I was cramming in a lot, and I got really burned out. I was really tired. I was ready to go home, going to work on Monday. Yeah, I mean, come on. Kelly says, "Let's go down to the creek stand. I'm going to put you in a ladder. Hunt till 9 o'clock. Hunt till 9:30. Give it a try." So I grabbed my rifle, and I'm going to show you the rifle that I was hunting with. I was hunting with this Ruger Mark 1 30-06. This is an old rifle. I don't know exactly what year it was made, but it's one of those good old guns. And yeah, it's in great condition. I bought it off the used gun rack at Pat's Pawn and Gun because I wanted a 30-06 rifle. They're a very popular deer rifle. I also had a 7mm 08, and I carried 2 rifles with me. In case you drop one or something, you bump the scope off, you might need another gun. When I was big into it, yeah, I got to have 2 rifles with me. And I'll tell you why that matters here in a minute. But that Sunday morning, he came and got me. I grabbed my rifle. I didn't even put on my boots. I just put on my tennis shoes, and I had a little jacket. It was kind of warm, which kind of put a damper on much of the hunting. And yeah, he went down there, and I got in that stand a little after daylight. He went and got in a stand further down. So there we sat, and the sun was coming up behind me. I was facing dead to the west. And the first thing I noticed after being there 10 or 15 minutes was the wind was perfect. The wind was right in my face, and I thought to myself, wow, that wind is just right for the lane that I'm hunting. There was an 80-yard lane. Thickets. There were thickets on both sides, and then the trail went north and south. And I was looking towards the west, northwest, and the wind was blowing straight down. And just about that time, I saw movement down there on the edge. Of course, there was a thicket on both sides of the lane. So I couldn't see into the woods. I could only see the lane. And down at the bottom of that lane, he had a food plot, ryegrass planted, and a little food plot there. It wasn't much. But he just went down there and scattered out seed, and what came up, what didn't. But you could see a green grassy patch down at the end of that lane. And I figured it was doe was fixing to step out or whatever, and I kind of readied my rifle, you know. And this buck stepped into the lane. Now, when he stepped into the lane, he was in a way and a demeanor that I wasn't prepared for. When he walked in the lane, he was walking very slowly, but his head was down, and his antlers were pointing straight, like his nose was pointing to the ground and his antlers pointing straight. And he walked with kind of a little limp or gamp, and walking, like I said, he was walking very slowly. And when I saw his rack, I knew right away, okay, that's a shooter buck, and that is a great deer, and I'm gonna shoot that deer. And so I brought my rifle to my shoulder, and I found that deer in my scope, and I let her rip. And the time that it took for him to walk across, I don't know, it was probably about a 18 or 20-yard lane. It was 20 yards wide, and he was probably about 3/4 of the way across it when I shot. And when I shot him, he fell straight to the ground. He didn't run off, and I just boom down on the ground. And I looked, and I said, wow. And I thought about it for a minute, and I said, what just happened? It caught me so by surprise. After so many days of hunting, wanting to go home, sitting on that stand, all of a sudden this deer steps out in the lane. I throw up, found him in my scope. Now the ladder stand that I was sitting on was a homemade made of cypress, boards, wooden ladder stand, and it was strapped to the tree, but it had no armrests. You just sat on the platform, had no real back to it. You just kind of sat there, and yeah, it was less than comfortable. It's the kind of stand you sit in for just a couple hours maybe. No place to put your rifle. You have to hold your rifle. No place to put your hunting bag. You either have to have it on your back or on your arm somehow, or down on the ground. Of course, I left mine down on the ground, and yeah, it wasn't a perfect scenario. Again, I just threw up and shot, and the deer fell on the ground. So I sat there for a minute and just watched and thinking, wow, man, what just happened? And I really couldn't see the deer very well because he fell into some tall grass, some cover there, and he made a little lunge forward, so I could see his antlers sticking up through the cover there, but I could make very little out on his body. So I sat there for a minute looking down there, and his head came up. His head came up, and I was sitting there. I said, oh, no. So I opened up the bolt, and I threw another shell into the chamber, and I threw up, and I put the crosshairs on his neck, and my rifle went click. The rifle went click, and it didn't fire. And I said, oh, no. And I opened up the bolt again and tried to put a bullet in, thinking that there wasn't a bullet in there. And when I tried to put the next bullet in, it wouldn't go. So I've got a deer down at the end of the lane, and I've got a jammed gun. So I have to make a decision what I'm going to do, and I have to make it right now. So I think the best thing for me to do at this point is just to get down, leave the deer lay. Obviously, it's a fatal shot, or he wouldn't be laying there, right? And let him expire over time. I'll go get Kelly. So I got down in a stand, and I headed down towards where Kelly was. And the further I walked, the more uptight I became. And I hurried my pace, and next thing you know, I'm kind of at a steady jog, a quick walk, steady jog, and my stress level is now pretty high. And I went around the corner. Of course, I'm running down a trail that's going through some really thick, dense woods. There's no way for me to go anywhere else. I know exactly where Kelly is. I knew how far he was. And I met him coming halfway up the trail. And I told him, I said, Kelly, and he said, what are you doing down here? What'd you shoot? And I said, well, Kelly, I think I probably shot the biggest deer I've ever had the opportunity to kill. And he said, what are you doing down here? Where's the deer? What are you doing here? I said, well, the deer's not dead. And then I showed him my rifle was jammed, and he took the bolt out of the gun. He unloaded it, took the bolt out of the gun, and he observed that the cartridge had fallen deep into the chamber of the rifle. And how that happened was, again, like I said, I carried two guns with me. I carried a 30-06, and I carried a 7mm 08. 30-06 is a long cartridge, and a 7mm 08 is a short cartridge. And I accidentally loaded a 7mm 08 bullet for my follow-up shot. It was the only one that was in there, but in there nonetheless, and jammed in my gun. So we took the bolt out, and I stuck it in my pocket and took the rest of the bullets out, and the other one was jammed in there and couldn't get it out, so we just left it in there. And Kelly said, so what do you want to do? I said, well, what do you think we should do? He said, hey man, it's your deer, it's your call. What do you want to do? I said, well, let's go down there and see about the deer. I said, he's down at the end of the lane, he's wounded, and I explained to him how the deer's head came up and how I couldn't do the follow-up shot. And yeah, it was a pretty stressful moment. And I was so scared that we were going to get down there and the deer wasn't going to be there. And so I said, you know, let's just go see about the deer, and let's see how it goes. So we head on back to the ladder stand. We're now at the ladder stand. Of course, we're on the ground. We're not up in the air, so I can't see over. There's a little knoll there, and you couldn't see over the knoll. And I knew exactly where the deer fell and knew exactly where it was laying. There was a tree kind of 3/4 of the way across that lane, and I knew that the deer had been laying close to it. As it turned out, the deer moved about 8 or 10 feet after I had left, and but was still laying there. But you couldn't see him unless you knew what you were looking at. And I got up on a little knoll and could look down. I said, "Okay, all right, that's him right there." And Kelly looked at him and said, "Where?" I said, "Right there. There's a deer right there. He's laying right there. See that little brown patch? That's him. That's the deer." He said, "Oh." And Kelly, of course, is challenged vision-wise because he's only got one eye. Kelly's had one eye the whole time I've ever known him, which is a lifetime. He's always had just one eye, and so I knew that, you know, seeing was sometimes a little bit of an issue with him, but you would have never known it. But Kelly said, "Oh yeah, I see him." So we started walking towards the deer, and Kelly said, "Man, that's a big old buck. Look at the rack on that deer." And then Kelly said, "He's dead." And at this point we were probably, I don't know, 40 yards away, 50 yards away. I shot the deer at 80 yards, and we were closing in on it, and we got about 40 yards away, and his head came up. And when his head came up, Kelly threw up his rifle and put a round through his neck and killed him dead, and killed him instantly. But yeah, that was right at that moment when all of that transpired. It really made kind of a moment for us that the two of us together with this deer is something that you just don't get at the local department store. You can't purchase it online. You can't get something like that shopping on eBay, or there's only one place to get such an experience like that, and that's in the moment. It's in the wilderness. It's in the hunt camp. It's in this buck, and in my view, we share this deer. I know that if he hadn't have put me down there, I wouldn't be sitting here looking at him today. If he hadn't invited me up to go hunting in Georgia, I wouldn't be looking at this deer today. If he hadn't have been my friend and cared about me and led me along and along and along, I wouldn't be looking at this deer. The list goes on and on and on and on. And yeah, our lifelong, we hunted, we fished, we worked, we did everything together. And I suppose it's been 18 years ago when I killed this deer. 19 years ago, maybe 20. I should have looked at the date, but I think I killed this deer in 2001. I think is when I killed this deer. It might have been 2002. I don't know. It was a long time ago, but and in a way it feels like yesterday as well. But yeah, this is Kelly's wife came down and looked at it, and she named this deer the Zuma 13. She counted 13 points on it, and she said that's the Zuma buck, Zuma 13 on there. Forget it when she said it. It's got a little point right here, and it's got a kicker over here, and it's got a kicker starting to come out right here. He almost had dual kickers. He's got a little point right here and a point. He's got another little kicker right here, and then he's got one down here, almost one right there and one right there. So he's got a lot going on. We aged this deer at 5.5 years old. The taxidermist who ages deer there in Cuthbert, not in Cuthbert, but in Cordell. He aged him at 5.5 years old. So yeah, he's a good respectable deer to take at Macon County, and I'm right proud of him. So that is the Zuma. That's the Zuma 13, Macon County buck. If you ever get the opportunity to go hunting in Georgia, whether it be in public or private, if you're from Florida and you want to kill you a big old buck, there's no better place to do it than Georgia. If you have the opportunity to become a member of a club, do it. If you can make it happen, do it. I wouldn't do it if it's going to, create hardship. It's kind of a rich man's game. The hunting licenses are very expensive. The trips up there are very expensive. Hunting leases are very expensive. I was very fortunate never to have to pay any money to hunt on this property. It's very fortunate never to have to, do any labor or contribute in any way. It was just one friend to another, and I'm so grateful to have had that. So there you have it. Zuma 13, like and subscribe. This is the Wild Treasures of an Outdoorsman YouTube channel, and my name is Peter Updike, and I'm so happy to share these moments with you and lessons that we learn along the way. So I think that's probably the thing I take away most is the memory and the lessons and the times we share together. All right, so that's that. Love you guys. We'll talk to you soon. See you. Bye.